All right. If you don't mind, can you tell us what today's meeting was like? What did you get out of today? What do you come away learning today?
I think today's meeting for me was a learning experience. I have a unique perspective as an Indigenous minister coming into this space. I can understand, what is expressed and shared on the Indigenous side of the room, but also feel the responsibility to ensure that in sitting on our side of the room, we are expressing what people wanted us to know today. And that varied.
Yeah, and I would say, further to Minister Gull-Masty, but a great opportunity to meet with chiefs from across the country, to be able to talk more in detail, to be able to answer questions, to be able to hear concerns, and to be able to hear about projects that people are interested in doing under this legislation. And this is just the start. This is just a summit, but really looking forward to the coming days, weeks, years to be able to go more in detail and hear about the priorities of chiefs and nations.
What level of support are you hoping to get from First Nations for these projects? Are you only going to pursue projects that have unanimous consent from affected First Nations?
I think the Prime Minister was really, clear with his statements. The interest has to be there, the willingness has to be there, and these projects can only happen if we believe that they're feasible as well. So in his statements that he made today, I think he answered that.
So not unanimous then, just some support for the projects?
Well, I think the other thing in the legislation, it does talk national interest, is about advancing the interests of Indigenous peoples. It won't be every major project that goes under this legislation. So we are looking for, as Minister Gull-Masty said, that high likelihood of success, advancing Indigenous people's interests, the focus on climate change. And so, again, we can't advance every project, so we want to see those projects with the best success.
Madame Gull-Masty, en français, s'il vous plaît, êtes-vous confiante de pouvoir rallier les personnes insatisfaites aujourd'hui? Parce qu'il y a des gens qui ont claqué la porte.
Je pense que oui, c'était clair. Le Premier ministre a vraiment parlé de ça dans ses remarques finales. Il y avait des personnes qui avaient des intérêts, il y avait des personnes qui se demandaient encore des questions, et il y avait des personnes qui n'avaient pas d'intérêt. Le but d'avoir des projets de nation building ici, c'est vraiment de assurer que tout le monde autour de la table veut avancer ensemble. S'il y a une partie qui ne veut pas avancer, c'est clair que ce projet-là n'aura pas vraiment une grosse probabilité d'avancer, même peut-être zéro de probabilité. I think that for me, and maybe Rebecca, you could help me on this, the outcome of these projects is for Indigenous interest to be there. So it requires Indigenous participation. The likelihood of these projects advancing or being completed without Indigenous people at the table, we heard the Prime Minister in the session, it is, I want to say almost, but to me sounded like zero. This is an investment into development. You can't do that if you don't have everybody at the table.
And I think the key things for people is, one, the Indigenous loan guarantee, so growing that from $5 billion to $10 billion, so that there is Indigenous equity in these projects, as well as the $40 million for capacity building, so that First Nations, Inuit, Métis can participate from start to finish in the process.
We heard from the National Chief this morning that she was looking for some firm commitments, including to meet again a year from now. Were you able to commit to meeting again a year from now, and what kind of commitments were you able to deliver to the chiefs that were here today?
The Prime Minister went, I think, even beyond that ask, because this is the first step. Regional discussions are going to happen next. We're going to be continuing this process with the Inuit, with the Métis as well. Those regional sessions will really look to refine what the interest is in the project. There's multiple steps about defining what does consultation look like, how do you want to have that conversation, and ultimately, what is the next step of engaging with other levels of government. There's many steps to complete before we actually select a project, and the Prime Minister wants to make sure that that's done well, and in his closing comments spoke about the level of trust and what's needed to make sure that we get to that place together.
Yeah, and I would also say that the thing I heard from chiefs is that desire to get to the discussion of talking about the project, and then that begins the consultation with impacted Indigenous rights holders. And so the thing that I heard is we don't want to meet just to meet. We want to be able to actually be either engaging in consultation or really discussing, as Minister Gull-Masty said, the more definition around items.
Do you have a rough timeline of when you may be able to share a list of potential projects with First Nations?
It's a long wait, I think.
Yeah.
Vous avez parlé de différentes perspectives justement pour en tant qu'autochtone. Comment réussir à allier les deux? Vous êtes donné combien de temps pour le faire avec le Premier ministre?
Le Premier ministre va prendre le temps pour assurer que le processus est fait bien. C'est ça le but. Il y a beaucoup de différentes perspectives. Il y en a qui regardent le territoire, il y en a qui regardent au niveau de la nation, il y en a qui regardent d'une perspective de gouvernance. On a parlé avec tout le monde aujourd'hui pour commencer. Là, on va regarder dans les prochaines étapes, dans une perspective plus régionale, ça va être quoi les discussions à ce niveau-là.
But how can it be a long wait to even get a sense of what's on the list when the whole point of this legislation is to get projects built faster?
The one thing I would say is for the next step would be setting up the Major National Projects Office, and that the Prime Minister said will be by Labor Day. Once the National Major Projects Office is set up, that's when we can start getting the intake of projects from provinces, territories, Indigenous proponents, private proponents. So once that office is stood up, then we'll be able to start accepting projects.
Do you think that the consultation needed and asked for by communities can happen within a 2-year time frame, which is the whole goal of this legislation?
They're there to co-develop that with us. I think so. I have trust and confidence in First Nations to be able to do that because they already have the capacity to do it.
Chiefs have said that consent isn't optional. Like they all want consent for the projects that go across their lands. What happens if someone doesn't consent? Does that just mean that the project isn't listed?
The project that has the most support, the most feasibility to be completed, and the interest of all partners to participate is the project that will likely move forward.
And a lot of projects, it's not like it just got thought of this morning. It's projects that have been in discussion with Indigenous peoples, with the public for a number of years. You know, when I think of in my home territory, the Northwest Territories, projects that have been discussed is stuff like the Mackenzie Valley Highway, the Tulsan, the Arctic Corridor, the Slave Geological, the Grays Bay Port. These are projects that have been in discussion for many years, and so again, there's a lot of pre-engagement from proponents before it even gets to the national office.
So if a community says, no, I don't want a project, what's the federal government's answer?
That is where Minister Gull-Masty said it a number of times. We're looking for those projects with a high likelihood of success, and we're not looking, it won't be every major project that's listed under this legislation. It is about looking for a few projects that the federal government would shepherd through this legislation.
Very left today also said she would be looking for a commitment that Indigenous services would not suffer any cuts if cuts were required in the public sector. Is that a commitment that was made today?
I think that as we go through this budget process, it is my obligation and duty to make sure that we continue to offer the greatest level of service and program delivery that we can. For me, that means efficiency and refining that service delivery. To me, that doesn't mean what I think the story is in the media right now. Being a minister that realizes the importance of having strong Indigenous community to participate in that process, that's the goal and objective of my ministry as we go through the budget.
And I would say, I would just add one thing on that is the revenue generating side, and that is the importance of this bill is to be able to grow our GDP and our revenue options to be able to support strong programs in the government.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Today.
Yeah. Thank you. You too.